Welcome to Sketchy Ideas, the live counterpoint video podcast where we illustrate and debate concepts surrounding leadership, business, personal achievement, and crazy Ivans in a way that may make you think twice before you illustrate, before you implement, or we're going to do illustrating, we're going to do implementing. That new idea you just learned all about on the internet. Welcome, I am Michael Rampolla.
And I am Brad James.
And today we're turning 90. It's episode 90 of Sketchy Ideas, which we are calling When the Ship Pulls a 180, major business pivots. I give up. Here we go. Major business pivots and their impact on small business ecosystems. Accuracy over vanity, Brad. But first, a word from our sponsors.
I suppose that's my cue to go first. Hey,
yes, it was.
Friends, it is the end of April. Marketing. If you're not marketing stuff right now and you're not doing sales right now, there's probably an issue with your business. You're probably not doing a lot of sales. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If you need some help, some guidance, some advice, do me a favor. Reach out to my friends over at Cream City Marketing. Spend an hour with them. They'll ask some questions. They'll put together some solutions. You're probably going to want some help. There's some significant changes. We're going to talk about one today. But email Erin at creamcitymarketing.com and she'll set up a time with you.
Thank you. You know, as a business owner, sometimes the future is unclear. It might feel like you are staring off into the distance through foggy lenses. When that kind of lack of clarity is preventing you from making the kinds of decisions that you need to make to move your business forward, Spirity can help you. It's like getting your prescription checked for your vision system. We want to provide you with the clarity you need to set achievable targets that are going to help your business grow and scale in a really meaningful and intentional way. So if it's time for a checkup on your vision casting prescription, reach out to us at spirity.com for more information. Try out the new metaphors. It's what we do. Oh, Brad, there you go.
I want to throw this out there to you to everybody. In 10 episodes, we're at episode 100. You may begin to see some cool changes. We're going to put together some really cool things. Episode 100 is a big benchmark for us. So just stay tuned, for the big changes. That's all I'm going to say.
Implying, of course, that up until this point, we have lacked in coolness. Just, and finally, we're going to get...
Which is reasonable.
Which is an accurate statement. I mean, I'm not... I just want to make... Cool things coming, finally. Yeah. At 100, we get cool.
Cool is also relative.
Yes. Get cooler.
There you go.
All right. So, Brad,
this
episode you inspired, I think.
Yeah.
I think
so.
You were inspired for this episode.
Yeah.
So frame this up for us. When the ship turns 180, this is how big things happening can affect us little guys, us small business owners, which is, I think, the majority of our audience. But those big things are out there. They seem like, it's sometimes the world away, or how does that affect me? That doesn't impact my day to day. What I heard from you is that it does matter, and it does have an impact, and it's understanding what that impact is puts us in a better position to make better decisions.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely it does. I think it's important for us to understand that as you as a small business owner are paying attention to the world or trying to pay attention to the world, that you pay attention to big episodes even if you think they may not affect you. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, I think there are a lot of people out there in the world who deal with the noise. And I also think there are a lot of people out there in the world who don't know how to deal with the noise, at least in a rational, calm, cool, collected way. One of my mentors that I've had for a long time has taught me to pay attention to what's going on in the world and not necessarily go down the rabbit hole irrationally, which is what I think most people do, but pay attention to what it could mean, maybe not at its surface, but at the second level from an impact standpoint. So a lot of things when we're business owners, we solve symptoms or we look at the symptoms potentially and the initial thought process, but not at the actual root cause or the root meaning of what it means for you as a business owner. And the reason I think this is important is because as a business owner, you're a leader, whether that's inside of your company, whether that's for your clients, whether that's for your vendors, whether that's in any like business groups that you're a part of, whether that's in your community. Inherently, if you chose to be a business owner, you inherently have some sort of thought in your mind that you are a leader. And more often than not, people don't necessarily look at that or pay attention to those things, but you need to, because your reaction to big things happening in the world or big business happenings in the world and how they impact you are going to help guide your community, your tribe, whatever you want to talk about. Tribe is, if you've never read the book Tribe, I would recommend it because you need to understand the impacts of the words that you say, your actions, and how you follow through on things, okay? But at its root, the reason this whole thing came up is because if you're not paying attention, for those of you who are listening and it's not April 2022, Twitter has accepted to be bought by Elon Musk. And so now it will be owned by Elon Musk privately. And if you're paying attention right now, you're looking at it from multiple different perspectives, multiple different lenses. Now, today, we're not going to talk about the whole free speech thing. We're not going to talk about how it impacts crypto. We're not going to talk about how it talks about oligarchy, politics, any of that stuff. My point is that big business things happen like this, all right? For those of you who are around in the early thousands with Enron, what did that do, right? When you're talking about acquisitions or big changes, when you're dealing with like the car companies trying to shift to electrical vehicles, right? Any of those things, you as a small business owner need to understand and pay attention to what's happening because it will have an impact on your business, even if there's a lag, right? So when we went through COVID, we tried to talk about how those things would impact and how they've changed work. Guess what? We've been right on most of those things. Most of the world has not gone back to the office. Most of the world has said, hey, if we're going to go back to the office, it's going to be this hybrid thing. So therefore, they're having to work in this remote arena. The VUCA concepts that we've gone over still apply today, all right? So these are big things. These are not like tactical things or personal internal strategy things, but they're important to your business yet the less, right? And these also fall outside of the guise of the 2% that you can control, all right? And the reason I thought this would be a good time to talk about this is because I think Twitter as a whole is a good business case because of what it has gone through both internally and what they're doing from a business model and how it might shift and everything else around it. And the reason I think you need to be aware, one, your tribe, you need to be the rock for your tribe, right? So if your tribe is whatever, you know, your internal company, your staff, your clients, your customers, et cetera, you need to become the rational thinker, because if you become the rational thinker and challenge the insanity that is inherent right now, people will gain respect for you, okay? I know this because, and I talk about this in all the sales courses we run. Look, the first thing people buy is not the product or service. The first thing people buy is whoever is selling the product or service. And honestly, if you're doing executive sales, which most small businesses are, they're buying you first. And not like in the sense of buying you, but they're buying into you first before they buy the product or service, okay? So when you look at this stuff, you know, I think the whole Twitter thing is a huge deal because it will have great impacts in marketing, sales, advertising, as well as in communication, press, et cetera, okay? But so many people are going down the rabbit hole of irrationalism rather than appreciating it for what it is and building a rational thought about how it might impact their business, okay? Those of you who are running ads on Twitter, pay attention. Those of you who are using Twitter as a social media platform, pay attention. Both ways, right? Those of you who are concerned about what this means in the world of social media in general, pay attention. But pay attention and don't be irrational about it. And I think so many times we get caught up. I mean, Michael, when you and I were talking about this, I don't know if you want to share, but you literally brought up, like, I don't know what's going on.
No, I literally did. And Brad said, well, what about with Twitter? I said, so listen, so I saw the headlines. I literally don't know where it stands as of like the last time I scrolled my news feed this morning, right? That is an unfortunate early morning habit of mine. Scroll the news feed, see what happened. And I'm like, okay, I know there's something happening. At that time, it hadn't happened. And I like moved on with my day because it had, at the end of the day, it might have happened or something, nothing might have happened. But I didn't know. Brad goes, well, what about Twitter? I said, well, literally, I don't know where it currently stands. He drops Disney. I go, I don't know where that currently stands. I know it's a thing because Disney's all over my news feed, but I don't know where that issue stands. So yeah, I admit the ignorance because from a day-to-day standpoint, sometimes that feels like noise to me. When I've got a meeting coming up and a client with this need, things that are in my immediate world, like literally my immediate world, people I know and can touch. Yeah, like Twitter is a world away. Doesn't, help me that I'm not an active Twitter user. So I know it doesn't literally impact me. I'm not going to Disney anytime soon, and that's mostly because of finances. So therefore, what's happening with Disney doesn't necessarily impact me. But I realize that if I truly just ignore those things, something's going to happen and move by me and change the world around me. And I'm going to wonder why. And that was the root of all these things that are actually impacting me. And if I miss that, then I'm behind the wave, like unfortunately a lot of other people. And well, it's not really a good place to be if you're coaching businesses on paying attention and staying ahead of things if I'm now getting left behind. For the record. So thank you, Brad, for making sure that I know what is going on in the world. And being a much better filter than my newsfeed algorithm ever will be.
Well, and that's all right. So this is part of it. Is I want to build a framework just like we did last week on how you can pay attention but not get pulled into the noise, because that's what I do every day, right? So let's start with just finding time every day. I think it's important to one, just regularly spend time paying attention. Okay, so step one is just be aware that things are happening, right? Which we've talked a lot about in the last few weeks. And then make sure you prioritize the time to read into things on a regular basis. Now, most of you, if you are a good business owner, are doing this inside of your industry. So this is also a good practice for you if you're looking at trying to curate the time and the effort of you being aware. And I'm going to get into at the bottom of this framework why this is important from an opportunity standpoint, okay? So prioritize the time. Two, as you prioritize the time, don't go beyond the time. Limit the time, okay? Things like, and this is where media organizations, if you're paying attention to social media, like if you're a marketer, you understand that TikTok has mastered this idea of the short-term video that keeps you scrolling and 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 scrolling, right? Instagram's also done a pretty good job at that. Twitter has also done a pretty good job at that. The difference is they're all slightly different motifs of how they're distributing information, okay? Okay, so two, stay in bounds, put parameters on it. Three, understand that if you haven't been doing this, don't just rely on the echo chamber that you're being positioned in. Okay, one of the big things and advantages that a lot of my clients on the in every business actually really appreciate is that I have consistently tried to find an article that says one thing, because here's the thing, brief education in journalism right now as it works. You have editorialism and you have reporting. Those two things are very different. Editorialism is opinionated, reporting is facts. You're just reporting facts. Unfortunately, there is not a lot of reporting happening right now. There's a lot of editorialism. And even in the guise of reporting, there's typically always an opinion or some sort of skewed thought around it, because they don't just say, if they're reporting, they go, look, it's rained 5 inches today. 10 people have drowned in the water. I don't know. I'm throwing out pretty morbid things.
But those are facts. No, I think this is really important to point out the difference. Really important because
whereas what is editorialism then to you? Yeah.
Well, okay, so here's what I heard. You just said that, and my brain goes, boring, but that's the point. The point is there was no emotion, there was no interpretation, there was no subjectivity. You're literally reporting on the facts.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas somebody else could take that exact same content and editorialize it because its function is different. Its function is entertainment. Editorial is the function of editorial, in my opinion anyway, is entertainment. That's its job.
Yeah, I agree. Now editorialism is marketing and sales for most people.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so understanding these things in number 3 is really important. This is where the whole reading comprehension that you were taught as a kid becomes very important. Okay, that's why they tested for this back when I was a kid. But I think understanding that difference and being able to, in your mind, practice filtering that difference. And it's really hard right now because most reporting, even if they're calling it reporting, is not reporting. It's still skewed editorialism, because in this day and age, and this is caused by TV ratings, advertising, everything that we've done over the last 70 years is all based on ratings, metrics, everything else from a sales and marketing perspective, okay? So when you're talking about reporting as it used to be, and I know there are video clips out there, go back and look at like when TV first became a thing or when radio first became a thing, reporting was actually very easy and most people did it. The only editorialists were the people who were, politicians were reporting, advertising spokespeople came on and doing editorialism, right? Like, so you knew you could differentiate very clearly. They always brought on a guest to do the editorial in the news, and the rest of it was purely reporting. Okay, it's not that way anymore, because now news is a form of entertainment, as Michael stated. All right.
So I'll give you this, because I'm trying to find the framework, but I'm not finding it. I'll give you this. A good question to ask is, what is the motivation of the source? So what the person putting out this information, why would they want to put this information out there? And if you can answer that question, oftentimes you can find whether or not it's editorial or reporting. And why would they want to be sharing this? Why would they want to put this out there? Why would they want to put it out there in this way? If you can figure out that, it's kind of a root cause in a sense. It's much easier to figure out whether what you're reading is on the reporting side or on the editorial side. All right, back to Brad.
That's a good question. All right, so number 3, read both sides and compare, right? I think is also that step 4, compare. And get used to doing this. But the challenge is in the way the internet is working currently is, and this is me being a marketer, this is why the internet has become a great sales tool with Facebook, Google, everything else. It begins to filter it down into your own opinion set. So now it's way harder to begin to search outside of your opinion set. So like, for example, in Google Chrome, do a search in regular browser and do a search in incognito and see if there's any difference, right? Is one way to do it. Or do a search in Google Chrome and do a search in Microsoft Edge and see if there's a difference, right? Like those are also ways to do it. And just see what pops up, right? And do a comparison. I think it's really important to do that. I also think test different search engines, right? DuckDuckGo is somebody that I've been using recently to just see. I like running tests on this because, as you can tell, I'm not somebody who likes to be put in a box.
Really? You seem like such a just go with the crowd kind of person, Brad.
Totally am one of those. Yeah, right? Yeah. All right, so consider implications, yes. So that's the next part of this, is once you've got that, understand the facts and understand what those facts might mean for you, okay? And this is where the opportunities or the shifts may come into play. At its root, if you do this on a regular basis, you now have things you can discuss from a rational standpoint, not irrational, right? Don't get bought into the editorialism. Stick with the reporting, because then when you're going in to have a sales discussion, you can talk about this knowledgeably, because there are still people who pay attention to this stuff. And you can at least approach it from both sides and show that you have empathy. One, opportunity. Not many people in the world right now are focusing on empathy and trying to understand the alternate view. You already have a win. Do this all the time if I can, okay? Two, if you're paying attention to things like Twitter happening or acquisitions like that happening, there are now tons of opportunities that will come of it, all right? There are a bunch of large social media networks out there right now. There are also a bunch of smaller ones spinning up that people are not aware of. And those are all marketplaces for you to acquire and build relationships. Similarly to the way, if you recall, the way that, I'm just looking up the name of it because I don't even go on it anymore, Clubhouse. For those of you who remember Clubhouse, when that popped up, right?
That was going to be a thing.
And where is it, right? There's still people who use it,
right?
But I also know that it's not huge, right?
Right.
Another one, like for those of you in construction, if you're not using House is a social media network built around very similarly to Pinterest for construction, home remodeling, et cetera, right? Like these are all smaller niched social media platforms. That's what they are. And those things will pop out because of this Twitter acquisition. So now pay attention to the ones that splinter out. And if you have one that's focused on your marketplace, go in there, spend some time in there, right? That's where the opportunities come up.
But Brad, I don't have time to learn another tool. But I'm already on so many different social platforms, Brad. Now I have to learn another one. I have to make a new profile and come up with a new password and everything. Oh. Forget it. I'm just going to quit social media.
Go for a month. See how that does for your business.
Right.
I'm all for detoxing from social media if you're a scrolling addict. Okay, I get it. I also understand the value of social media for a business, which is why if you follow any of like our social media stuff, it's targeted at adding value to the clients that we're targeting inside of those businesses or building relationships inside of those businesses. We're not trolling. We're not resharing things that are totally outside of what we're talking about. We're not doing any of that stuff. I think that it's important to pay attention if you're doing this, to make sure you understand also if your audience is leaving, hey, then you reprioritize where your time's going.
You figure where they're going. Go get there.
Yeah. Most people in the world are fair weather fans. It doesn't matter what it is because it's all about what are you doing for me lately.
Right.
So if you're not paying attention to this stuff, you're going to spend all your time on Twitter still and not know where they're going, right? The counterpoint of this, and the reason I bring up Enron is because I think most people remember Enron and that whole thing that happened, okay? The reason I bring up Enron and this whole 180 idea, because that went from big to nothing, right? That's why the whole 180 thing happened. That was a time when you were running business at all, you now had to create so much more transparency in order to get deals done because everybody was worried that they were getting scammed.
Right.
So these big company things, that had nothing to do with most businesses, but because it happened and people saw it in the news and people saw all the bad things that came out of it, now there was this sense of distrust.
Right.
It didn't matter what it was.
And a ton of regulations that every business had to adopt. Right. Can I tell you my current least favorite piece of regulation that I'm like, I don't understand why this matters, is whatever makes the cookie acceptance thing pop up on every website that I go to. Thank you, whoever decided that was important. I know I'm being tracked. I'm on the internet. Could I just read my article, please? Do I have to accept or decline a caseload of cookies first? Really? Do I? Can I just read the article, please? So that thing was like, no big deal. Like Enron turned into like 3 or 4 different financial regulations that every business had to implement in a matter of a couple of years. Now they're just how we do business.
Big or small. Big or small. It didn't matter. Okay.
Was that socks or was that something else? Was socks from something else that happened?
Oh, I'm not
Yeah, I don't remember. I just don't even know. It was a thing. It was a thing, and now it's not a thing because it's a thing.
Another one that happened that most business owners don't pay attention to, right? The IRS is going to spend time and effort now tracking every transaction that's over $600.
Right.
What that means, like this is the point of this conversation. If you are so gung-ho on the day-to-day and focused on what you need to do, which is extremely important, without opening up your purview from the tunnel vision to understand what's going on in the world around you and what it could mean for your business, directly or indirectly, you can get blindsided.
True.
That's the whole point of this, right? So to me, here's what I do. I spend throughout the day in 5 to 10 minute chunks. Typically, those 5 to 10 minute chunks are when I get to a meeting early, when I just have 5 to 10 minutes, or when something canceled and I'm in my car and I have nothing else to do and I'm sitting there waiting. I listen to books or podcasts, but if I'm podcasted out, that's when I'll spend my time going through looking at news. And then I see something cool, I see it, I search it on Google, I search it on Safari. I do what I need to do to understand and build my own thought.
Right.
My own thought. Not just regurgitating, my own thought. Because my own thought is more important than what everybody else is telling me to think about it. And before this show, I mean, Michael and I have a lot of discussions like this because, believe it or not, even though we agree on a lot of stuff, we also disagree on a lot of stuff. I think it's really important that, I think it's really important if you're a business leader, you begin to develop your own thoughts around things, just and make it a goal, right? Like you can agree with something full-heartedly, but put that thought into your own words in order to be able to communicate it to others.
Well, here's why I'm going to take that because that goes really, let's make it number 6. So consider the implications and then build your own thoughts accordingly. That becomes a thought, a plan, an action, because what it means for me is what I can or should hold on to. Right? That's the important part. That's the nugget that matters because I don't want, and I was being kind of cute about the whole social media thing. No, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. I don't want you to be scrolling your news feed and trying to soak it all up. No, some of it matters, some of it doesn't. The stuff that does matter, figure out how, hold on to the how, not the all of it. Right? Yeah. So what might this mean for me? I threw this out there. Is it an opportunity? Is it a risk? Either way, what's the action I'm going to take? Right? Now I've got a thought which turns into an action or a plan. And now I've got something worthwhile.
Yeah.
Right? Thought, no bad on just having a thought, but if that thought has value, if that thought has meaning, if I need to do something with the thought, I think this might matter. I should look more into it. I think this might mean nothing. And okay, good. Like it's like impact and likelihood. It goes back to when we did, Nicole, it goes back to when we did our implications for the future and the switch track idea about the likelihood of it happening and the size of the impact. If I can quick evaluate what does this mean for me on likelihood of happening and scope of impact, then I know what to worry about. Like I said, Disney probably doesn't affect me for another couple of years. I'm okay with that. I'll figure it out then. Twitter might affect me sooner, just from an idea about how it affects my clients and the people that are on the platform and when it matters tremendously to their business. There are other things that have a bigger impact and a smaller impact, and I have to prioritize all of those because if I get overwhelmed, like every other human out there, then I'm going to get stuck in the noise and miss the signal. That's the point. So no,
Yeah,
you don't have all the socials. No, you don't have to relentlessly scroll your news feed. You do need to figure out what's worth paying attention to, and then pay attention to that, and not paying attention to everything.
Right. Yep. And when you pay attention, don't go down the rabbit hole of irrationality. I think that
be the rock,
because,
according to Brett.
Yeah, there's so many potential outcomes that people do go down the rabbit hole of irrationality. And it's easy to, right? Sometimes I get caught in it. But that's why doing this stuff, like if you're scrolling, you do it in short bursts, or you do it like for people who are riding an exercise bike, or if you're on a treadmill walking, right? You do it in short bursts where your mind and blood is flowing, because from a psychological, biological standpoint, it's active. And if you're active, if something hits and it causes some emotion, typically those emotions hit us, especially when we're sedentary, because it's the only place that blood and things are happening are up here in your brain. And you balance it out through action by building endorphins or action or momentum in a different direction that may have nothing to do with it, right? That's just biology. That's like the whole premise of it. That's also physics, right? Object in motion, object at rest, that whole thing. Those are things to keep in mind when you're doing this. So we don't really have a bunch of time, and I think let's close this one out. But before we do, I do want to say thank you to Nicole for being on here. For those of you who don't know, it's Administrative Professionals Day, and that's how Nicole hopped on here. So I'm going to say thank you to Nicole and Caitlin, who are awesome.
The things I need to pay attention to. All right, then I gotta give my shout out to Amanda and Rebecca on my team, because otherwise I'm gonna get an Instagram. No, I didn't even know. See, you would think my administrative professional would let me know that it's Administrative Professionals Day.
Oh, mine didn't.
Too meta? No? Oh, you're just paying attention. Good for you. So I'll double down on the thanks for Nicole, and a huge shout out to Amanda, who supports me every day and makes me look good in ways that I could not do by myself. Thank you. And all the administrative professionals out there, far too unsung heroes of our worlds.
By the way, they make the world turn. Treat them nicely, because they do. That's a topic for a whole other day. But anyway.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Anyway, all right. With that, hey, we got to get out of here because it is 2:00. So with that, we just learned all about not getting stuck in the noise and building your own thoughts and being the rock for your tribe, your community, whomever, and make sure you're paying attention to the world around you so that you can create your own thoughts and help other people understand what is actually happening with reporting and facts, not necessarily editorialism, all right? Next week in episode 91, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do. I have a gut feeling we're going to dive into Michael and I are going on a road trip next week, knock on wood. So maybe we'll talk about why retreats and doing that stuff are important. That actually sounds like a good thing, and taking a break.
Like that.
In fact, I think that's what we should talk about, because that's what happened last week in letting fires burn. Let's talk about that. Hey, we're going to talk about fires next week, even though I hate using that metaphor in this case, because it actually really sucks to have a fire. But anyway, we're going to talk about fires next week and why letting them burn for your mental space is really important. And in the meantime, if you have questions, ideas, comments, concerns, thoughts, wanting to tell us how bad we are or how great we are, I prefer the second one, email us at info@sketchyideashow.com, and a member of our production team will probably get back to you, will get back to you, and come back next week when we skip the rabbit hole even more and talk about some more sketchy ideas live. And remember, just because it is a sketchy idea doesn't mean it's not worth exploring. And we'll see you next week. Take care.